So for this project, we are going to look at three of some words that terminologies and words that you've heard me thrown around in the classroom. We've talked a little bit about in passing, but we're just going to look right at these specific words. And that is your foreground, your midground, and your background. Now, those words relate to the levels in your picture. And so what I mean by levels is how close it is to the viewer and how far away it is from the viewer. And so for this picture, we are the viewer. We are the person looking at the picture. So if we're looking at this picture, the thing that is closest to us is this big rock right here, which means that it's in the front, which means that it's part of our foreground. Okay, so think of it as like front and foreground. Okay, then the stuff that's farthest away from us, way in the back of the picture, like this rock right here and the sky, is part of our background, okay? Because it's in the back. And then the stuff that's in between, so it's not super far away from us, but it's not super close to us, is in the midground, because it's in the middle of our picture. Now, this does not mean that if it's at the top or the bottom, it's always part of the foreground or the background. Because I might have like a really tall tree that stands right here, that goes all the way up, and it touches both the top and the bottom of the picture. But if it's super close to me, it's part of the foreground. So think of it as, let's say this picture is all of a sudden like it's actually, we're looking into space, like we're looking down a block on a street or something. If the house that's on the corner closest to us, that is part of the foreground because it's super close. And the house that's farthest back down, all the way down at the end of the block, at that corner, that's part of the background. But that house that's right in the middle of the block, that, is only like 3 houses down as opposed to like 8 houses down or something, that's part of the midground. So the house that's closest to us when we're looking down a street, or like this rock right here, is bigger. Stuff that's closer to us in the foreground is bigger than stuff that's normally the same size, but is far away. So like the house that's closest to us is about this, it's a 2-story house, is going to look bigger than the house that's at the end of the street. A tree that's closer to us looks teeny tiny when it's far away. So that's also something you got to think about when you're making your pictures. And so what we're going to do is we are going to look specifically at a foreground, a midground, and a background in our next drawing. All right, so to get started for this project, we actually need to cut it out first. So you're just going to cut right along the thick black line. Do not cut those, all right? So just keep cutting as you go, all the way around. All right, so now I have my foreground, my midground, which I actually need to decorate on the other side of this piece of paper, and my background. So I'm actually going to start with my background. And in your background, that's typically things like sky, mountains, far off trees, that kind of thing. So I am going to start by putting some mountains in here. All right. Maybe I'll make this a sunset kind of a thing with some clouds going right off the edge. I'm going to make these some snow-capped mountains. All right. And then in my foreground, so that's things that are the closest to us, remember. So I think I'm going to put like a little lake here. Maybe I'll put a tree, some rocks, some bushes around that lake. Maybe some flowers on those bushes. It all depends on what you're going to end up coloring with it. Like that's going to be kind of hard to color with marker. And then I think maybe I'll even put like a road. All right. Yeah, no, that's not a road. So I've got my road going on here. All right. So now to decorate the other side, I'm going to need to flip it over. Okay. And it's going to go straight down like this. All right, so this is my midground. All right, so as you can see, I've decorated my midground, but I'm noticing a problem. So remember, we talked about this earlier. So if it's in my foreground, it should be bigger than my stuff in the midground. So I have a tree, I had a tree here and I had a tree here, but my tree in my foreground was just way too small. So what I'm actually going to end up doing is I am going to change that to maybe like a nice big, like a rose bush or something. So this is my stuff that's closer. And then I got rid of that road too because it was just way too small. But looking at this, you know what I think I might want to do? I think I'm going to have a little baby road that looks like it's like a path that's coming down to my, like it's a hill, and it's coming down to here. And then it'll kind of show up here nice and big. And look at that, it's a nice little dirt gravel path, okay? And then maybe it'll go like back into the mountains or something later. But now I can look at it and I can be like, okay, do I have a foreground, a midground, and a background? Looking at that like that. Yes, I do. And you know what? I think I'm even going to cut this a little bit to kind of better match my trees. You do not have to, but you can if you want. You might want to wait to do that until you're done coloring. That's up to you. It depends on what you're going to use. But now I need to color. Okay, so to color this, I'm just gonna flatten it back out again. And I don't wanna get like color on my table here. So I'm actually gonna take my scraps because it's useful. And I am just gonna color kind of like that just to make sure. And you can color right over the word background. And I just realized I drew this as a sunset, but I didn't draw it as a sunset, color it as a sunset. All right, so you can see I fixed it. So I moved my sun because it was going to just be easier to erase the sun than to erase the colored pencil. But now I need to keep coloring. And you can see I'm going way past the top of the midground. And that is because I don't want my mountains to just all of a sudden be white. Like, people need to be able to see that. And I am actually going to add some Purple Mountain's Majesty to this. Just a little bit of purple to kind of set one mountain apart from the other. And I've got to be really careful because I don't want to, you know, like, it's thin paper, so I don't want to tear it. I don't want to accidentally like make it rip or fold because it's normal printer paper that we've cut even smaller. After you're done coloring, you can fold it back up. Once you're done, you'll have a picture with a background, that's my mountains, a midground, which is my cottage, and a foreground, which is my lake.